Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to AMC Mailbag. This is your Sunday edition for the Mailbag Show. Of course, our spin-off of AMC Movie Talk, where all we do is take your mailbag questions. This show's a lot more laid back. You can tell I'm just sitting here in my office. Schnepp is just over there sitting in his. Speaking of which, I'm being joined by John Schnepp, everybody. How you doing, John?
Hey, what's up? I'm wearing my Dr. Doom face t-shirt. Oh, I am Doom!
That's awesome. So yeah, this is just our mailbag show. And listen, if you've got a topic or a question that you'd like us to address on AMC Mailbag or on AMC Movie Talk, you can email us anytime at amcmovietalk@gmail.com. We get a lot of emails from you guys, but every day we pick out a couple to read on air. And today we've got 7 of them that we're going to go through. So let's start with the first question of the day. And the first question today comes to us from Santeri Nikula, who writes, "Love your show. Do you think there is hope for KickAss 3? Thanks for the news that you give me. Your show is the highlight of my day." Well, is there hope for KickAss 3? Financially speaking, I'd say yes. I think there is financial hope for KickAss 3. KickAss 2 was made for like $25 million. I think they've already equaled that internationally. So they're well on their way to breaking even and probably going to make a little bit of money. That being said, I don't, otherwise, outside of, I think financially you can justify doing a KickAss 3. But my feeling from watching KickAss 2, I don't get the feeling that they are planning on doing a KickAss 3. I mean, let's face it, Hit Girl's getting older. And so as she gets older, the novelty of the little cute girl beating and killing everybody, that's going to go a little bit. And like I said, just narrative-wise, I just had the feeling from the movie like they were done. I felt like they were done. I could be wrong about that. Schnepp, from what you've heard or anything, I know you haven't even had a chance to see the movie yet, but yeah. Do you feel like they might do a Kick-Ass 3 or that they have any plans of doing Kick-Ass 3, knowing the comic books as well as you do?
Well, there's a Kick-Ass 3 comic book out right now, so I think the plans are to make a Kick-Ass 3. I haven't seen Kick-Ass 2, the movie, but I read Kick-Ass 2, the comic book, which it's based on, so I'm excited to see Kick-Ass 2. I've just been busy, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it, and it makes sense to make a Kick-Ass 3, at the very least, to round out something that is a trilogy right now as a comic book. And it makes, promotional marketing sense. It makes money sense to be able to package a trilogy. So as opposed to 2 episodes, it doesn't make as much sense. And that's all comes down to box office. If it makes enough money, and then it makes enough money, just like the original Kick-Ass was a box office failure and then made tons of money on DVD and Blu-ray. So that's what actually prompted them to say, there is a life left in this property. Let's make the second one. So it makes sense financially and hopefully critically. It seems like a lot of people liked Kick-Ass 2. There were some more negative reviews and saying it wasn't as good as the first one, but a lot of people said they really liked it. So I'm really eager to see it.
Yeah, I really liked actually Kick-Ass 2, and I agree with most people. It wasn't as good as the first one. I think the reports of how much money Kick-Ass made on home video are over-exaggerated. The reality is, you listen to any studio, they'll tell you home video revenue is just not what it used to be. Right. Gone are the days when DVDs were the big thing and stuff like that. The amount of money they make on that stuff now is a fraction. I'm not going to say infinitesimal fraction, but it's a lot smaller than what it used to be. But it doesn't hurt. It certainly doesn't hurt. All right, let's move on to the next question. The second question today comes to us from Edsel Laurel, who writes, "Would you like to see a remake of Back to the Future? Would it work in this time period?" Thanks a lot, Edsel. Schnepp, what do you think? Would you want to see, or even could it work, a Back to the Future sequel?
You know what? I mean, there's always remakes. So it's been, almost 30 years since the original Back to the Future. I mean, if you put a new spin on it and it goes into the future, comes back from the past, whatever, it's I think it would be fun. I mean, but I don't think he'd go back to the 50s like the one that was done 30 years ago. Now he'd go back to the 80s, which would hit the soft spot for all the adults and teenagers.
I haven't thought about that.
Yeah. So it's sort of like Back to the Future. It'd be like a kid now going to the past and listening to Duran Duran and dancing to Adam Ant. That's how old that is. Unfortunately, anybody who's older will be like, wow, really? Yep. That's what's happening. It's not going to be Chuck Berry. So
You know what? I think you just changed my answer. Because I was going to say, look, I'm the guy who I'm all for remakes. I don't care. Remake anything. It doesn't matter because you know what? If you make a good movie, then we have another good movie. If it sucks, then we still have the original. So I don't see any downside to doing a remake. But I was going to say, until you just changed my mind, that I don't see much point in redoing a Back to the Future. Let's put it this way, Back to the Future isn't all that dated.
Right.
So it's like, and a lot of people today, it's one of those movies that almost everybody still has watched it. Even though it was 30 years ago, almost everybody's seen Back to the Future. And a Back to the Future today would probably look almost exactly like a Back to the Future they made back then. But you make a really compelling argument about how, you know what, have them going from this period back to the 80s or back to the 70s. You know, and it could really be a very different movie that way. And to all the purists right now who are already typing their emails to me about, John, how dare you say it's okay to do a Back to the Future? It's okay, folks. It's okay. You know why? Because the first one is so awesome that even if a remake sucks, we still have the awesome first one. It's okay. So take a deep breath and just say, it's okay. All right, let's move on to the next question. The third question today comes to us from Michael Barker, who writes, one of my favorite movie franchises is the Indiana Jones movies. I wasn't too impressed with the latest one, Crystal Skull. Well, I don't think any of us were, Michael. Yeah. But have you heard if there's any movement for another installment? I think it would be awesome if they could just continue adding on like James Bond has done over the decades and use new actors to play Indy every 10 years or so. Do you think that's a good idea? I think Ford made such a perfect Indy that maybe we just can't find someone to carry it on, or could we? Excellent question. Now, let's get to the first part of your question. The first part of your question being, is there any movement? Now, there was some murmuring about George Lucas was, kind of working on another one. Then again, he was working on the fourth one for 20 years. Before it ever actually happened. So there was word that he was tinkering with it and working on it. Harrison Ford has said he'd be up for it if they wrote the right character for Indiana Jones. But, with the sale of Lucasfilm to Disney, I think there's definitely a future for Indiana Jones, but I don't think it's the Harrison Ford Indiana Jones. I think we're done with the Harrison Ford Indiana Jones. And I love your idea, what you're saying about, just keep Indy going. Just change Indy out every 7 to 10 years like they do with James Bond, that they do so well with James Bond. But here's one of the key differences. With James Bond, you can constantly update the era he's living in. It's not like Daniel Craig is set in the 60s. Daniel Craig's James Bond is today. And I kind of feel like one of the core essential elements of Indiana Jones, and hey, I could be proved wrong about this. I'm totally open to being wrong about this. But I kind of feel like one of the core essential elements of who Indiana Jones was, and one of the reasons the last film didn't feel like an Indiana Jones movie to me at all, is he's got to be fighting Nazis. I mean, that to me, when I think of Indiana Jones, that's the era he lives in. So I'm all for redoing Indiana Jones with a new actor every 5 to 10 years. I would just always want it to stay in that era. I wasn't so big on the Cold War Indiana Jones. And I don't know how I'd feel about a new Indiana Jones, who carries around a Facebook phone on him. I just don't know how I'd feel about it. It's a tricky predicament. I'm very curious to see how Lucasfilm and all of them move forward with that in the future. I don't know how you do it. Schnepp, how would you do it?
Yeah, it is quite tricky because you bring up a very important fact, like the very first Raiders of the Lost Ark, before it was even retitled Indiana Jones and he didn't have a bunch of extra adventures, was made in the 80s, like 1981. And so basing something in the 40s, which was only 40 years ago then, was kind of like, it was cool, and it was like, oh, remember those serials? Those weird like serials that were all like, this thing happens and this thing happens. Let's make a movie like that. That's why the movie came about, because George Lucas and Steven Spielberg were of the age where they had grown up watching those serials. That's just not how society or the entire world is now. We're watching little clips of like some silly person talking on a YouTube channel. Like they're watching people like us on YouTube. It's the whole way people get information and talk and perceive and watch movies and television shows now. They didn't even have television back then. So everything is totally different. Now we're in 2013. So to keep mining the 1940s and the serials, I agree with you. Either you stay in the 40s and just like, hey, but they kind of did that with the TV show. I don't know. It's a sticky situation, and doing. Sorry, hold on a sec. And doing the the updated version. Crystal Skull had so many problems, not only just putting it forward into the 50s. It was just a horrible film. So, I don't even count it. There's a trilogy, and then there's this weird, aberrant kind of mutant creature that's attached, Like, they're trying to sell it as like, buy these 4 films. I'm like, yeah, but just take this one out and kind of throw it away or give it to, not give it to your enemy, not your friend. So, I just really didn't like it, unfortunately. So when Harrison Ford announces that he's like, yeah, we're talking about doing a 5th one, I'm just like, really? To me, it's like, I'm really excited about Star Wars. That makes sense. The Indiana Jones thing doesn't make sense to me. And I mean, what's he going to be in the 60s?
Yeah, or the early 70s.
Yeah,
now,
early 70s. Actually, that wouldn't, that just saying that right there, Indiana Jones in the 70s doing some kind of like spy type conspiracy, the Cold War, all that kind of stuff happening. That could be cool, but I don't know. Rebooting him like James Bond, at least in my mind, doesn't really work because he is a character who grows older in time, like just how they've established it already. So it's sort of like he's a real guy. So they would have to go back to the 40s.
Yeah, it would have to be a real reimagining of the whole franchise.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, with Bond, they did it. I mean, Sean Connery, in his last couple of Bond films, was starting to get a little bit older. So was Roger Moore. But you can do it, but it would take some real engineering. It would take some real creative storytelling engineering to pull it off and make it work right. All right, let's move on to the 4th question. The 4th question today comes to us from Ryan West, who writes, "Hey guys, how you doing? So, I've been thinking, in a past show, John stated that he believes that Batman vs. Superman has the potential to be the biggest money-making film of all time, depending on how the critical reaction is and word of mouth. All that being said, do you all believe that if all the variables come together, could this movie be the first movie in film history to make not $1, but $2 billion at the box office? No singular film has ever done that. Do you think Batman vs. Superman could very well be the first?" Now, just to catch you all up to speed on what he's talking about, I have said that I believe if done right, and by done right I mean marketed right, number one, you got to have a great film. If Batman and Superman film that's coming out in 2015 is a great movie to start with, that's where you have to start. If it's a great movie, number one. If they can follow the same formula that Avengers did in the marketing plan, and what I mean by that is this, is the most brilliant thing they did in the marketing. The trailers for Avengers were okay. They were good, but they weren't amazing. What they did that was so smart was really far in advance. They started letting all the critics see it because they knew that the movie was great. And the critics saw it, and all of us critics, in one harmonious and unified voice, started singing the Hallelujah chorus about how great Avengers was. And it just, now the Avengers was already a film they were building up for. It had a lot of momentum. But then you added that crescendo of adding, for weeks, just idiot critics like me going mad and losing our minds over how good Avengers was. It just peaked perfectly. So I have said, if Batman vs. Superman is a great movie with all the brand recognition that goes into it, and they play their marketing cards the same way Disney did with Avengers, I do believe it could be the highest grossing film of all time. Now, to answer your more direct question, could it be the first film to cross $2 billion? I'm going to say no. I don't think we're at a point right now where a film can make $2 billion. Not yet. I think we're close. But I just don't think we're there yet. I mean, I could see Man of Steel making 1.6, 1.7, but that extra $300 million is a huge gap. I don't see $2 billion becoming a thing. Now, Schnepp, I know you don't even think Batman vs. Superman is going to be the highest grossing film of that year. So how do you see this?
Not $2 billion. I don't think it's going to happen. Not, I think it's going to be a really fun movie. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it, but I think Star Wars is going to be the one that, if everything works right, is going to be the moneymaker of that year, and then Avengers. It's really Avengers, Star Wars are going to be the ones that are battling, and I think Man of Steel will come in second or third. So, I mean, but, ultimately I don't make any of these billions, so I don't care. I just want the movie to be really awesome. That's what all I care about, whether it makes $1 billion or $1 million. I would like it to make a lot of money so that they could continue and make a third awesome Superman movie and maybe Justice League and things like that. And that's all depending on how much money it makes. That's really the ultimate reason is why, hey, people want to keep seeing more adventures of Henry Cavill as Superman, and they like this Batman, and let's run with the whole gang now. Now we have Justice League. That's only going to happen if the sequel makes a ton of money. But first and foremost, I want it to be a really good film. And everything I've been hearing and reading about, like Goyer, like making sure they're going to have, Batman address the whole Zod thing with Superman is, I think, really great. So it could be quite an incredible, fun action film.
You raise a really interesting point, too, about we do have to keep in mind that the new Star Wars film is run by Disney. It is the same marketing team that got Avengers to that huge heights. It's the same marketing team that has made bad movies like the last 3 Pirates of the Caribbean films make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. If they can do Star Wars right and market it right and make it awesome and return it to its former glory, it's got a chance of beating Batman, Superman. I have no doubt about that as well. All right. Next question is from... I already did this one, so we're going to the next one. The next question is from Harry Green. And Harry Green writes, "Greetings and salutations. As I look forward to another great show. Hey, what's going on with the second installment to The Girl Who Played with Fire? I thought the first installment was pretty good and would like to see how Sony tackles this next one. Keep up the great work." Now, for those of you who don't know, The Girl Who Played with Fire is the sequel to The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I am one of the few people who actually thought this North American version with Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was actually better than the original. That's just my opinion. I know a lot of people disagree with me. That's cool. But I think this North American remake was even better than the original. Now, the sequel is The Girl Who Played with Fire. Where is it? It's been years. It was originally supposed to come out this year. Now, the last that I heard... with any reliable sources, was about 6 months ago. And the reports were that they were having problems getting the film going for financial reasons. Number one, the original film, not talking about the Daniel Craig version, but the European version, made like $100 million on a $13 million budget. That's great profit margin. The North American version, however, made about $240 million on a $110 million budget. That's not great profit margins. That's actually just getting by the skin of your teeth, making profit. So from my understanding was that Sony was wanting to cut the budget. But with the huge success of Skyfall, Daniel Craig is now asking for more money. And 6 months ago, the word was that Sony was getting frustrated and they were even considering moving ahead with the sequel without Daniel Craig. A move that I think is fine. If you know the story, you know that Daniel Craig's character is not the key character in the second film. I believe the character is always more important than the actor. Daniel Craig did a great job in the first film, but I think you can get another actor who can also do a great job as well. But that's as far as I know, is that it got held up because of finances. I still believe that they want to do another one. They're just trying to figure out the best way to do it. Schnepp, do you want to see a sequel to the North American version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo? And how long do you think it'll be before we see it?
I'm in the opposite of you. I loved the original the original trilogy. I happened to just stumble upon seeing the first one in the theater, and my mind was blown, and I loved it. So when I heard about Fincher doing a remake, it was like, you know what? The Swedes are rocking it. It's like, Let the Right One In was so incredible. Let Me In, not so much. All these like remakes of these Swedish movies that are just killing it are just not as good, unfortunately, in my mind. So I think the trilogy already exists, and that's the only trilogy that I'll ever watch. I saw The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the remake, and Nomi Rapace is incredible. Rooney Mara, I think that's her name, right?
Yeah.
She's also great, and David Fincher's a great director, so it was fun to watch, but it was unnecessary to me. I'm like, you know what, Fincher, use your time wisely, Like, don't remake someone else's incredible movie, make your own movie. You're not putting too much of a spin on The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and you're certainly not going to put too much of a spin on The Girl Who Played with Fire, because you're following the book, and it's like, I mean, a lot of the material, the source material, like, it just felt like I was watching like a shot-for-shot remake in certain parts of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I don't want to see a sequel. That's where I'm at. I've already seen the trilogy, and if they do it, they should shoot both of them back to back. Because that's the problem with these trilogies where people just take 5-6 years to make the second or third one, and then people's interest is waned, and they're like, why is this even coming out? It's like, the studios should get a little smarter about it. And like, hey, the girl with the dragon tattoo, the Swedish version, was shot all back to back. It was actually a television series. So, you'd think that a studio would be like, hey, we want to get all the actors here. We want to shoot all three of them. We're going to make our trilogy. It costs less. People's wages aren't going to go up. We can release them every 2 years, but let's just shoot all three at once. That's how it should be done. That's the only way to keep your price point down too. So I certainly hope that studios in the future who are going to be doing trilogies and adaptations of even superhero movies do 3 of them. Doctor Strange, they should shoot 3 of them. That's how I think. So,
yeah,
even Marvel should just do that. Just put them in, get them in the bag. Shoot right. I mean, look, comics come out every month. TV shows once a week. I mean, movies are the only ones that are sort of the strange creature that's slowly dying. Where Netflix, we're like, hey, we got 13 episodes. You can watch them all at once. Movies like, here's 90 minutes. Now you got to wait 6 years.
Yeah, I think you raise a really good point about the whole notion of, once the first one's done. I mean, I understand not wanting to shoot a trilogy right out the bat, because you just don't know how the audience is going to respond, and now you're stuck with the bill for 3 films instead of 1 that people aren't wanting to see. But once you did the first one, you're going to do the next 1 or 2. I agree with you. Do the next 2. But I got to challenge you on this. I got to disagree with you about the whole. Mm-hmm. The Swedish version was great, therefore don't do it. And I know I saw it, the Swedish version, and I really liked it. I know you saw it, and you really liked it. But let's face it, nobody else did. I mean, when you're talking about in the grand scheme of things, of the overall movie-going audience in North America, nobody saw it. And I thought it was great that they brought that story to the North American screens for audiences to love. And you talk to most people who never saw the originals, the Swedish versions, they really like the North American version. They thought it was great. They really loved it. And they never would have had that experience had filmmakers like Fincher and Sony had the guts to take the film, remake it into a North American context, and they still did it in the Swedish context, but do it in English, do it in a North American with a North American cast and crew, and release it here. And now so many more people were treated to that great story because they did that. And there are some of us, although I admit I'm in the minority, that actually like the North American version better. But I think you're bang on. Once you got the first one under your belt, if you know you're going to be making at least 2 more, just shoot them. Yeah. Just shoot them. It makes sense financially. It makes sense from a point of view of logistics. It's just the right way to do it. Just do it.
And also, I mean, I think Fincher definitely added some of his flair and his touch to the film. I love the title sequence, that crazy 3D morphing sequence, and there was a lot of sequences that were in the newer version that were definitely David Fincher, But I mean, I just feel like it was so close to like a remake of a series of films that I just saw a year ago. That's how it felt like to me. So that's why I was so these remakes that are so close in separation, like. I know it's Swedish, and then they got to remake it for the American audience, but it was only a year ago. So, like, that's why, to me, it's like, have David Fincher remake something from the, the early 2000s, not like 2011,
Right. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question comes to us from Trip Dope, who writes, Aloha, AMC crew. You guys are so good at what you do. Campia is a movie genius, I say. Okay, so my question is, with the new installment of Riddick launching into theaters this September, I have noticed not a lot of talking about it from you guys. Are there any of you as excited as I am? And are you guys into the previous 2 films? Been a huge fan since Pitch Black, and with the same director and return of Vin Diesel and Karl Urban, why not talk about this film? Thank you, and keep up the addiction, and keep up my addiction of this show going. All right, so first of all, when I read your question, Trip, I went and checked, and I did a little search, and we have talked about Riddick no less than 5 times on AMC Movie Talk. So we've talked about it, maybe not as much as Batman, maybe not as much as Justice League, maybe not as much as KickAss, but we have talked about it. And when there's news to talk about, we've talked about it. I will admit, though, I am not, while many of my friends are, I myself personally am not a big Riddick fan. I was mediocre on Pitch Black. I was okay. I kind of like Pitch Black. I thought the Riddick Chronicles, or whatever the second one was called, I thought it was a mess. I thought the second one was just terrible. with a lot of potential. I thought it had a lot of potential, but I just thought it sucked. So I have not been excited about the third Riddick film. That being said, I have liked the trailers. I do like what I'm seeing from it. So I'm going to say I'm modestly excited to watch the new Riddick. I'll say this. I'm looking forward to watching it. I am looking forward to watching the new one, but I don't have a huge amount of enthusiasm because I haven't loved the previous two. But we have talked about it quite a bit on AMC Movie Talk. Schnepp, are you looking forward to the next Riddick film?
I am a giant fan of Pitch Black. I saw it just like it was like, I should just check out this movie, Pitch Black, whatever. Went and saw it, mind blown, loved it. Loved the beginning sequence with the crash on the planet. David Twohy did an incredible job making an amazing horror film. So to me, Pitch Black was so great. The Chronicles of Riddick, when I first saw it in the theater, I didn't like it. What's all this necromancers and this and that? How come it's not like Pitch Black? Because they went in a total different realm. They tried to make Conan in space, which upon years later, I watched it again, and I was like, you know what? I actually like the Chronicles of Riddick because it has this kind of weird Dune-ish flavor where there's these weird religions, all these different alien species. It's definitely corny, but it was fun. And then I've watched it a few times since then, and it's grown on me. I mean, it's definitely not an incredible film, but it's really fun. So this third film, just called Riddick, but it's like kind of merging both Pitch Black and the Chronicles of Riddick. And then after seeing the trailers, I'm totally jacked up. I think it's going to be an incredible, fun film, going back to the original horror stylings, but also throwing in that necromancer weirdness, some of that Dune craziness, It's like, is Riddick a god? I don't know, but look at these monsters, I think it's going to be really fun, so I'm jacked up for it.
All right. Let's move on to the last question of the day. And the last question today comes to us from Will H., who writes, "Hey AMC, love the show. James Marsden has recently said that Cyclops will not be in X-Men Days of Future Past, which is a huge disappointment as he is an important character to the X-Men. Anyways, he said that Bryan Singer may bring him back in the future, and I wanted to get your ideas on how this could happen and if Fox even cares about the character at all, given how he has been treated in those movies. Keep up the great work." Well, you know what, Will? I'm a big fan of X-Men 1, big fan of X-Men 2. I was okay with X-Men 3. I didn't dislike it as much as most people. I think it had its redeeming qualities. But I will say this, consistently throughout all three films, the horrendous disrespect shown to the Cyclops character always disappointed me. I love so many things about those films, but how they treated Cyclops is kind of this whiny little, wimp. In many ways, as a whelp in many ways.
Yeah.
Really disappointed me. Cyclops is supposed to be the heart and soul of the X-Men. He is the leader of the X-Men. He is supposed to be that guy. And he was just treated as a sniveling little whelp, like all the way through. Like to the point, I remember the one scene that disappointed me most was, I believe it was in X-Men 3. And there's this scene between Professor Xavier and Storm. And basically, Xavier, Patrick Stewart, tells Halle Berry, when I'm gone, I think you're going to have to lead the school. And she's like, well, what about Scott? Scott's not been the same since, Alkaline Lake. And it's like, to me, that was just putting the cherry on the disappointment sundae. Because they had mistreated him so badly. Now they're just admitting right out, yeah, we kind of screwed up Cyclops. We're just kind of throwing him away now. By the way, we're going to kill him and not even let you see him die.
Here's his floaty glasses. Yeah,
here's his floaty. Which kind of leads, I still believe there's a chance he's actually alive because they went through, in X-Men 3, a lot of effort to show Phoenix evaporating people. And yet we didn't see Scott die. They alluded to it, but we didn't see it happen. And so I kind of still think there's a chance he's alive. And that's how I think they'll bring him back eventually if they do. But I agree with you. They mistreated that character. They misused that character. I hope if they do bring him back, that they bring him back as Cyclops, not as this wimpy little whelp that they've had the whole time. And a waste of a great actor in James Marsden at the same time. Anyway, Schnepp, how do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a little bit of a bummer as far as look, the X-Men Days of Future Past is going to have like 700 mutants in it already and 2 multiple timelines of actors playing the same character. So that's a juggle fest already, like that you're going to come out of that movie in some way, shape, or form, I think, disappointed with the lack of one or two of these characters that you were like, well, I wanted to see more of this character. I want to see more of this character. And you're just not going to get that. You're going to get Wolverine, Magneto, Xavier, and then Storm, and then Beast. And it's just this, like, this pecking order because of the star, the caliber of the star, and how much screen time. They only have like 90 minutes to up to 2 hours. So how many, minutes of story can you cram in for, like, Havoc? I guess he's jacked. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's a bunch of characters and then they're introducing a ton more from the future. Those guys are going to get one line each. I guarantee you, like some dude standing with a weird tattooed face, one line. So, you know what I'm saying? It's really like that's kind of how that film is going to go. And then any future X-Men movies, if they move forward and are able to bring Cyclops back, if they do use James Marsden and he's been in some alkaline egg from however they rebirth him, and it's the same actor, he's going to obviously be 15 years older. So he better be leading the X-Men. You know.
I agree. Well, all right, folks, that will do it for us. We're all out of time. Thanks so much for joining us. Listen, by the way, if you're not a subscriber yet to our AMC Movie News channel, make sure you take a second and click on that subscribe button. Become a subscriber to our AMC Movie News YouTube channel. It'll keep you up to date on everything going on in the world of movie news, and, of course, our daily AMC Movie Talk Show and this very AMC Mailbag Show on the weekends. Make sure you follow us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And thank you so much for joining us today. And listen, there's a lot of great movies playing right now in AMC theaters everywhere. Head on over to www.amctheaters.com to get all your theater, showtime, and movie ticket information. I want to thank, first of all, the director of the upcoming The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, Mr. John Schnepp. Schnepp, where can people find you online?
So at Twitter, at John Schnepp, or you can follow my Vines, John Schnepp Vine and John Schnepp Instagram. I'm always making some weird videos.
And you can find me on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, just at John Campia. So thanks a lot for joining us, folks. My name's John Campia for AMC Movie News. And until tomorrow, bye-bye.